end, these workshops are about getting children and young people familiar with not just the process and how Parliament works, but also about what's in the Children's Amendment Bill. So the first thing we need to know is that an amendment bill is a bill that changes an existing law. And the law that it's changing is called the Children's Act. And this law was created by Parliament back in 2005. And I'm just going to show you a couple of minutes of a video because we want you to go back and share with your organisations and your groups if you're going to understand the law that's in Parliament now, you have to understand the law that's changing it. So here's just a little extract from the video that explains what the Children's Act is about.
A few parents intentionally set out to abuse their children. However, widespread poverty, social fragmentation, a culture of violence and unemployment inherited from apartheid are all now being compounded with the HIV/AIDS pandemic. This is resulting in a large number of vulnerable children in dire need of social welfare services.
No child ever wants their parents to go through a bitter divorce, but it happens. No community ever wants parents to die from AIDS, leaving their children to fend for themselves, but it happens. No community ever wants its children to be physically or sexually abused, but it happens. Teenage pregnancies do happen. Street children are a reality, and we need to make sure that we render services to them as well. We also need to make sure that there are a full range of services for children who are mentally or physically disabled in some way.
The main purpose of the new Children's Act is greater protection for children, and the reason we have this new law is to coordinate and improve social services to children, especially those who are most vulnerable.
For the last 10 years, the government has spoken to the people of our country. Through workshops and with your help, it has produced the new Children's Act, which has been carefully designed to ensure that our children receive maximum protection as outlined in our Constitution.
So I'm going to stop that there. You can watch the videos on YouTube. You can use it with your own groups. There's also a series of little books that have been specifically designed for children and young people that will help you understand the key issues. Again, those are available free on the website.
This comprehensive.
So now let's take a look at, we said that that's the original law, and the bill, this new law, is called the Children's Amendment Bill. It's trying to change parts of the existing Children's Act. You saw that video was made back in the mid-2000s, and lots of things have changed since then. So the bill needs to be brought up to date. It needs to reflect what the challenges are for children today. But there's also things that went wrong when they tried to implement it, and they need to change. So the bill that's in Parliament now is called the Children's Amendment Bill, and it's there to make changes to the Children's Act. And you've got the right to influence what it says. And there's a picture on the screen of Bella Kazi way back in 2005, and she was telling members of Parliament to make sure that the original bill protected children from forced marriages. So what in this new law, what do they want to change? What do we want to see? So there are rules about care and protection. So that's about what happens in investigations into child abuse. There's some sections that are looking about what decisions a children's court can make. There's things about how early childhood development programs, that's your creches and your nurseries. There's rules about how they're managed and run. There's also a section that looks at the role for the person who's responsible for the National Child Protection Register. There's things about adoption and abduction. But today we are going to focus, we tested out all the different topics and spoke to people about what they were interested in. And first of all, children and young people told us that they were interested in the sections about the rights of unmarried fathers and their children. So Imbonisi is going to be leading a small group to look at the right to family care, the different rules for married and unmarried fathers as they stand, and what changes the new law is proposing. Nez's group is going to look at the rules about children and alternative care. And in particular, they're going to focus on one of the big gaps in the current law, which is around ensuring that there are programs to prepare children before they leave either children's homes, child and youth care centres, or foster care, and support them once they've gone back into their family or their community. So that's group 2. Paula is going to be talking to you about care for orphans and abandoned children. And what we find is that most children go and live with relatives such as grannies or aunts. And the current law says that they have to be placed there by a social worker following a special process in court. And she's going to look at some of the alternatives and find out if you think it's necessary. Then we have Isabel, who will be looking at another gap in the bill. Now, last year, many of you will remember, you'll have seen in the news that the Constitutional Court banned smacking, banned what's called corporal punishment. They said it was a violation of children's rights to be free from violence, but they left it up to Parliament to decide how to implement that ban. So there's a gap in the law about how we deal with parents, how we protect children who report that they're being beaten. And one of the questions that she wants to look at with you is whether or not that should be in the Children's Act and how we should ensure that children are protected and they grow up free from corporal punishment. And finally, Professor Anne Skelton has recorded us a video. She's busy at the United Nations today, but she's an expert in children's rights, and she's recorded a message for us about the changes that are proposed in terms of children's privacy. And in particular, what's really important to note is that at the moment, the current law protects children's privacy in children's court inquiries, but not in the High Court. But the effect of the changes will mean that there's no protection, even in children's courts, and that privacy is no longer protected, so that the media could, for example, report on children's court processes. So we'll take a closer look at those issues in that small group and find out what you think is the best way forward. So that's it from me.